Friends, welcome to this edition of Wild and True. Today, we got a whole host of new sponsors going to be coming up, but first, let me tell you about the ones that I know we got on hand. Cat Paw Bend, your source for seedlings and seeds for your own game paradise. Winchester Shot Shells, packing the punch for trophy longbeards. Mossy Oak Camo, hiding hunters in plain sight for over 30 years. And Federal Ammunition, the best over-the-counter ammo for big game that there is, period. At least that's the facts according to me. But today, what I want to talk to you about is a continuation of shot placement. Um, there's a whole lot that goes into, determining how the projectile travels through the animal and so on and so forth. And shot placement is just about as critical as anything that's going to happen in the hunting woods. And it certainly goes hand in hand with recovering the animal. Um, there's some pretty simple rules that if you follow those rules, you end up in pretty good shape. Um, Always visualize the offside shoulder, no matter how the animal is facing, whether he's facing you or quartering away from you or um, just a slight turn. Try to push the projectile through that offside shoulder, and in most cases, you're going to go right through the vitals. But sometimes it gets even more simple. When you're shooting a rifle, I try to aim at the point of the shoulder, and that gives me the maximum amount of room that I can shift around. In other words, if I'm a little bit far back, I'm still in his lungs. If I'm a little bit far forward, the impact usually will anchor him till I can get another shot in him. If I'm a little bit high, once again, same thing. If I'm a little bit low, I'm still down in the heart region and all that kind of stuff. So that's an important thing to think about. And with a rifle, it's not as critical as it is with a bow. In other words, I spent a lot of time bow hunting, and I bow hunted with some really good hunters. And I remember one time we were over on Willow Point Island. I was first introduced into the Mississippi River region on Willow Point, and I don't know if any of y'all ever been down there, but they actually grow sycamore trees in a rotation, much like people grow pines and everything. Of course, you know about sycamore trees; they tall and basically slick barked and everything like that. And so I showed up there, and we had a one extra. It was three of us, and so there was an extra man all the time. A lot of times we use the extra man to move tree stands or camera locations or scouting or whatever. But anyway, let me tell you what I learned on that first trip to Willow Point Island. They carried me out there, and they put me in this one guide there. Um, his name was Tom Jones, just like Tom Jones. And he said, carry Jim over to such and such and put him up in my stand. And so it was a climbing stand. And so I asked Tom before I went, I said, how far do I climb? He said, oh, you'll see my marks on the tree. He said, climb up to about where them marks are. And so I said, okay. Well, I carry a bona fide 30-foot pull-up rope. It's 30 foot because I've stretched the tape measure beside it. I know it's 30 feet. And his marks went higher than what I went because I was picking the front end of the bow up off the ground, and I was out of rope and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how far he set up in that tree. So I was sitting up there, and boy, I was on Willow Point, and all I could shoot was a doe, because, of course, the bucks are uh, pretty valuable over there and everything like that. And I was just on doe patrol for the evening, and so I was sitting up there. And the second lesson that I learned on Willow Point was when the deer started showing up, I could see a long ways. I mean, I could see basically a quarter mile in kind of a semicircle around me. I could see at least 400 yards. I could see 600 or 800 yards in some places out across there. What I was at, I was on a finger of them sycamores that kind of stuck out into this bean field bottom, and of course they grew the beans for the deer, so the field was full of beans and all that kind of stuff. And so deer started showing up and everything like that. And then as the sun started kind of going down a little bit, uh, the shadows kind of deepened, and as the shadows deepened out across the field, the other thing I remember about this, that it's the first time I ever seen deer. Deer would all just be out there eating, and all of a sudden they just look around at each other, and they would just haul boogie for like 200 or 300 yards, and then they slam on brakes and go back to eating. I couldn't figure it out. And uh, they'd eat there for 8, 10, 15 minutes, and then they just haul boogie back the other way. I couldn't figure that out. I just, for the life of me, I couldn't figure that out. Of course, I'd always been one to kind of play the wind and wanted to win and all that kind of stuff. And like I've said before on this thing, if you ever hunt a elk and you can figure out how good they can smell, you can know you're not going to beat a deer's nose. You're just not going to do it. I mean, if the wind's wrong, you busted. And, it's just sometimes the wind is moving your scent in a way that you can't really see. It may move out and stay right above the top of the ground, and the deer actually walk up under it and stuff like that. But if the wind's dead wrong, you busted, because you can feel the slightest breeze when you elk hunting, and he's already done smelt you and all that kind of stuff. If the wind shifts and you hunt elk, it's pretty well over. But anyway, I was sitting up there, and so back to these deer running. They were run and run and run and run, slam on brakes. And so at first I thought they were smelling me. But then I couldn't figure out why they'd stop, go on back to eating. And by this time, I could not tell you how many deer I saw that afternoon. I know I was up around 80 something that had passed me in some semblance of range within 50 yards of the base of the tree, I'd say, which ain't range for me, but they were within 50 yards of the bottom of the tree, and like I said, I know I was on 80 something that had come by me. But I don't know how many deer were out in that field. To this day, I couldn't even tell you. But these groups was running around, And then this other group over here, they'd run like the devil down here. They slam on brakes, they go back to eating. And that group up there, they'd run back just where they went. And so I didn't know what was happening. And what was happening is they was running from the mosquitoes. Now I know that sounds crazy, but I asked one of the boys up there, because that's one thing about me, I'm going to figure out what's going on. And so I asked one of them boys, I said, I couldn't figure out why them deer all this would haul boogie to the field, slam on brakes, go back to eating. And they said they was running from the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes would gather up around them, and then they'd run, they'd get them a clean spot, and they'd eat for a while until the mosquitoes all been up. I said, oh, okay. Well, how many mosquitoes are we talking about? Well, that brings us the next lesson. When I got out of the truck, I think we were in trucks at that time. I'm pretty sure we were in trucks. But anyway, when I got out of the truck or four-wheeler or whatever it was that I had been transported out there, the man asked me did I have any mosquito repellent. And of course, me being scent free and paranoid, and it's the first time I'm on Willow Point and all wanting to do everything right, I said, no, I ain't got no mosquito dope. He reached in his pocket and he handed me a little spray bottle of that 100% DEET. And he said, this'll help, you know, especially up around your ears and your nose and all and everything. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm really going to put this DEET on me. I'm out here hunting these deer. And so here we go. As the shadows kind of lengthened out across the field, I heard something, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it might have been like a boat on the Mississippi River, like a barge or something. I heard something. And it did, I'm going to do the best I can to make it sound like what it sounded. It was like, wah, 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 wah. And it kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I was like, what in the devil is that? Well, about time the sun got down far enough that I got in the shade, I realized what it was. That was mosquitoes. And that's how much racket they would make. It would be like, it sounded like an old bullfrog croaking down in there or something. I didn't know what it was, but I figured it out pretty quick. And so once them mosquitoes got to showing up, I said, forget this being scent free and trying to keep your clothes clean and all that. And I sprayed that stuff all over the back of my hand. Now, luckily I had it where my clothing, it really wasn't that critical, and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have to spray it like all over my body or anything. I just had to take that. It was 100% DEET. I can still see it. It's the only kind that I use that's in a little old pump spray. And we use it a lot during turkey season to keep mosquitoes out from around your eyes and your ear and everything. Anyway, I got the backs of my hands wiped down good and up and around my sleeves, and then of course mopped down my face and all that kind of stuff. And I forgot to mention along through all this is that I'm not scared of heights, but I don't embrace heights. In other words, when I get to a certain point, I really had to teach myself to be able to whitetail hunt with a bow and arrow effectively, especially when you got in terrain that had any kind of roll to it, because you liable to be 30 foot up the tree where you need to be 30 foot up the tree, but you liable to look out the backside of the tree and it be 150 feet to the bottom of the gully.